Hey Terraformers, it's Andrew Brown, and we're back for another video. And I said I was going to continue on from the last video, but I got tired. I got tired, and I'm back here, and so I'm going to have to reopen the branch here, which is probably mostly what everyone else is doing here. So let's make sure we switch over to 47 Terratowns provider, and we're going to go ahead and open up Git pod here. And we'll have to get ourselves resituated because I don't exactly remember what we're doing. I think that we had the provider set it up and we were now looking at the implementation of the resource. So we'll work through that. And again, I want to remind you, if you're watching these videos and you're going, Go is so hard and I don't know why we're doing Go and I don't like it, and this is a beginner boot camp, what I want you to do is just do your best to watch these videos, try to absorb whatever you can, because I'm just trying to get you exposure and trying to give you more of an elastic mind in terms of solutions and things you might need to touch in the future, and just copy and paste the code in and do your best there and get it from my repo, okay? Because my repo is public facing. I'm not expecting people to be good Go programmers. I'm going to repeat that in every video here so you know. But if you can try and do it and follow along, you might find you'll walk away with something very valuable, okay? But don't stress yourself out. Just do your best, and if you have to copy, that's totally fine. It's a beginner boot camp. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to go and look at our Terraform, our Terraform provider Terratowns code, and we'll go into the main Go file, and well, we'll wait for the Go syntax highlighting to pop in here, but it looks like we set up our provider and we weren't able to do much because we don't have a resource defined. And so that's going to be the next step that we have to do. We were using this tutorial here, and maybe we can go through here and see what we have. So we need to define a resource. So I'm just going to see if they do this in here. So we have defined the schema. We did do that. They're showing an example of what their schema would look like. So I didn't know you could do embedded nested schema, so that's kind of cool. And here they're reading from a data source. We don't utilize a data source in here, which is totally fine. Maybe it's not, I don't know, but we don't utilize the data source. Add data source to provider, that is totally fine. Test the provider. What I'm interested in is setting up a resource, right? So there's authentication. Let's go look at read. And I'm just trying to find code examples here that's going to help us out, and then we can try to map over to our own. Define an order data resource. So we need to make our own resource for home, and that's what we want. And so they make a function in a separate file, probably over here, for a resource, and it defines its own schema, very similar to the provider. And so I think that's what we're going to do ourselves. Of course, I have our own code from before that we will utilize here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to pull up the code example so I can walk us through it. Just give me 2 seconds. All right, so I have my reference code, and we're going to go back over to our code. And did Go give us some nice highlighting yet? It still hasn't. I'm going to go over to my extensions. I'm going to look for Go lang. I'm going to see if I can force it to give us the nice styling here. Is it this one? It looks like installed, so I'm going to hit this button here maybe. Please, can you get some highlighting? I would really like some highlighting. Disable, and then reload required, and then enabled. I'm going to press buttons. I just want the highlighting. There we go. So I fiddled with that a bit. You might have to fiddle with it as well. There's other tools for utilizing Golang. Again, I just have not looked into them. Like there's one for this, but you know, I don't know how to use it, so I don't want to get too complicated here. But anyway, we have our provider, and we didn't do this part, the configure context function. So maybe that's something that we should do. I know we were reading about it before, so there is some function that we are defining here. So let me go and take a look and see what that looks like. So I think the provider configure allows us to set a configuration global variables. If that doesn't make sense, it'll make sense in a second. So what I want to do is, well, before we do this, we have our validate function. Let's make sure that works first. Sorry, I'm all over the place. What we're going to do is make sure our validate UUID will work. and we'll bring back our log because I want to see that logging, right? We talked about having that debug level on. And by the way, we want to make sure we're on the Terraform tab because this is the tab with the debug on it. Remember, we set it over here. The debug over, where is it? Here. So if we're on this tab and this tab only, the Terraform tab, we will get that additional debugging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and you probably couldn't see that I clicked on that tab because my head's too big, Terraform up here. But I'm going to go ahead and do or build our thing there. So bin build provider, our provider, and we'll give it a moment to build. And so it looks like we do have an error, and that's totally fine. So there's some issue with the validator, and there's some highlighting issues. So that probably would help us indicate that there's something wrong. I think it doesn't like the single quotations. Maybe Go only lets you use doubles. I don't remember. But some languages are like that. And that's what I normally remember, that, you know, some languages like this, some languages like that. Notice the highlighting is now correct. We'll go down. We'll hit it again. We're still having error, undefined ERR on line 60. So line 60 is here. And it doesn't like that ERR. And you know what's missing is this assignment. So it's this colon equals. So I believe that is like declare and assign at the same time. So declaring would be, they complained about it earlier, but this is how you declare and then you would assign, and this does that in combination. There are some cases where you might not want to do that, but, and I don't know when it's good and when it's bad, so I'm gonna stick with my code here, but let's see if that fixes our issue. And it still says line 60 undefined UUID right here. It doesn't know what this is because up here it's not included. And I believe it was github.com/Google UUID. And if we run this, it's going to probably tell us to install it. It does. We'll go ahead and copy this. We will paste this in. We'll hit enter. And GoGet is no longer supported outside of a module. Oh, right, because when we do go get or go install, we have to make sure we're in that directory when we do that. So I'm going to go inside of that directory, and we'll go ahead and paste that in there. We will cd back. We'll type in clear, and we'll try to build again. And we still have an error, line 62, totally fine. So on line 62, it's complaining about what? Error type is not an expression. This thing is saying it's not an expression. It doesn't like it for some reason. Well, there's nothing called error around here. It's errors. So let's put an S on that. That's going to fix that issue. Okay. Line 65, missing return. So it's supposed to return something. And it doesn't need to return anything, but we're just going to type the word return. It's interesting that it... So I think the thing is that the way it works is that if it validates, it will add an error. If there's no error, then I guess it just returns normal. And I would have thought you'd have to type true or something in here. Maybe you do, but my code just has that and it works fine. So if anyone knows Go better than me and building Terraform providers better than me, please tell me how to do it better. But I'm just trying to get it to work, and I think I'm doing an okay job at it. Anyway, so we built it. There are no errors outputting, so that is good. So what I'm going to want to do here now is do a Terraform init, or TF init. And I'm just looking for any kind of errors. The other thing is that let's see if our provider is logging. Notice we have these prints here with the validate UUID. So I don't see them there yet. I think they probably happen when we do a Terraform plan. So let's do TF plan. And validate UUID. So I don't see any logging here, but to be fair, there is no infrastructure to change. So maybe we'd have to have infrastructure for change for this to trigger. And I think that's probably what's happening there, but at least this code's not throwing any errors. We're gonna go onto our configure context function. We'll go down here and we will take a look at how we need to write this. So to write a function in Golang, it's gonna be func. and this is called provider configure, and it's going to want a pointer or a reference or pointer. I don't know if it's reference or pointer to schema here. And then we're going to define the function here. You know, again, I don't know what I'm looking at, but I know enough to know what looks like code here. So you know, just understand that that's what it's like. I can do this with any language and get the work done, and that's sometimes what you need to do. And then hopefully you have somebody that knows better and will help you on the spot, on the job, to do it more automatic. But sometimes you might be the only person. You just have to get it done. And so that's what I find here. So we'll type diagnostic, gnostics here, and then a curly. And so now we have our function. It looks like a function inside of a function, something I do a lot in JavaScript. So it looks like something to me. But we really don't know what it is. We could probably just ask ChatGPT to maybe try to explain it to us. Because we have schema, configure, context function. Yeah, maybe we'll go ask ChatGPT for fun. But I just want to finish implementing this. So we'll have our config. We'll assign a variable there. And create a config here with curlies. And we will define our endpoint. Get endpoint. And we will cast this over to a string. And then we will do a token here. And this will be a token. And user UID. And we'll do user UID. Return @ config nil, because that's what it wants. What the heck are we looking at? Okay, so I'm not seeing any highlighting issues. This all looks fine to me. What I'm going to do is just copy this. I'm going to ask ChatGPT, can you explain this Golang code to me? Okay, and let's see what it tells us. Whether it's truthful or not is a different story. I heard that OpenAI can go out to the internet with plugins. Still don't know how to do that. Is it down here? Yeah, I don't know. Because I saw on Twitter it said, like, as of today, you can go out to the internet. And that would be really, really good to find out. So here, the Go code is defining a function called provider configure, typically used in Terraform providers, and to initialize the provider with those. This is defining a new function, provider configure. This one takes an argument of p, which is a pointer. Yeah, so it's a pointer. I said reference, but pointer to the SDK schema package. The function returns a schema context configure function, which is a type representing a function that is used for Terraform SDK provider. So yeah, it's interesting. So, you know, if you really don't know what we're looking at, you can kind of go through this and try to read it. And, you know, again, even if you don't know, the more you try to expose yourself to this kind of stuff, eventually it will start to make sense, right? And that's what I do when I don't know what I'm looking at. I'll just keep looking at stuff and eventually it'll click. It's like building up a vocabulary. And, you know, I recommend to do that as much as you can. But anyway, so I think that I wrote this correctly based on, and again, I'm just going based on my old code down here, right? Not going to be one-to-one with this repo, this private repo, but we have this provider configure here, and let's see what happens if we attempt to build it. So go here, and we'll go to our build script. And it says undefined context, undefined diagnostic, undefined config. These probably have to do with what we want to import. So I'll go and look if there's something else. There is a thing that we need here called diag for diagnostic. Notice that it's not going to always suggest what to install here. We just sometimes have to specify it. But there's this. It didn't know what context is. I know context is some kind of Go library. I don't know what it is. What is the context Go library for? Carrying deadlines, cancellations, and other request scopes values across API boundaries. Sounds complicated. Are used to propagate request scope values, API boundaries in between Go routines. Okay, so it sounds like something interesting. Not 100% sure what it does, but I get a kind of idea. It's saying undefined config. So here, and I believe this is it looks like a struct to me. I think that's what it is, or yeah, that's a struct. And so we need to define our own struct. That's a common data type you see in a lot of programming languages or data structure. So we'll go here and we'll say type config struct curlies, and then we'll say endpoint string token string user UID string like this. Okay, and then we'll go down below. And so that should solve those three things. We'll go ahead and hit enter, and it does. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And here we're just populating that config so we can use it in other places. Again, this is not going to do anything because we don't have a resource. We're just getting the lay of the land set up here. I guess the next thing would be to set up a resource. So up here, we will want to define a new resource. I think in my original code, I called it a house, and now I really want to call it a home. So we'll go here and we will say Terra Towns home, and this will be resource. And for some reason, it likes to end with commas, so we'll put a comma on in there. Not used to doing that. Other languages don't like that. And we'll go and define our func. Again, for those that know Golang, they're probably saying, Andrew, this should be in its own file because it's being exported. And I go, that's fine. I'm just going to do it this way, even if it's not super idiomatic. I think it'll be still okay. And we'll go and log this. And I'm just putting these logs here so that if we have a really major issue, we can kind of pinpoint where it is. This is a logging strategy that I use where I'm just like, all right, show me the entrances and exits of functions. So when it throws an error, I can kind of pinpoint where something happens. It's a bit verbose. You wouldn't want to do that for your production code, but it's just very easy for debugging that I like to do. So we need to define a new resource here. So through the schema, we are going to see. So if asterisk is pointer, then this must be a reference. We go, what is a reference and pointer in Go, e.g. ampersand and asterisk? Because it's pointing to a place in memory, as far as I remember from my C days. Yeah, memory address for a variable. So the operators to get an address of a variable, yep, and then the other one points to get an address, and the other one to access the value. Okay. So if that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. But I'm just trying to remind myself those things there. When I really started out really early, that's what I learned was C and C++. That would have been like early 2000s. And I vaguely remember, I could probably do C code if I really wanted to, but I'm just saying I just remember some scraps of memory. And even though I'm not writing C code, it helps in these this case where I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen these before. But what we're doing here is we are defining 4 functions. Again, Golang does not have classes. They have something called interfaces. Normally I would want to put this in a class in other languages, but that's how it is. So we have a resource, and we have to define these 4 actions: the create, the read, the update, delete. Every single resource in Terraform provider will have to have those 4 actions, which is crud. If you look here, create, reuse, update, delete, crud. That's what it's doing. And probably there's a Wikipedia article on crud. Here it is. So I'm going to go here and just bring that over to my documentation. And we'll go into week 2. Terraform provider resources utilize crud. CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. Okay. We'll link the article here. It's also sometimes used to describe a user interface convention that facilitates viewing, etc. But yeah, it has a very specific expectation. So earlier we did create with post, get, read with get, update with put, and delete with delete. They of course have some additional options here. But if you want to read a little bit more here, you can. It's not that complicated. It's just like a standard for defining things, and that's what they stuck with here. Anyway, so we have our resource, and we've defined these four here. We need to have these functions, so we will have to define those functions, but let's go down here and just do that really quickly. So this is going to be func resource house create, and it's going to want a context, whatever that is. And we're going to want to have our schema resource data in here, and that will be defined as this variable D. And then we will want an interface for some reason. That'll be defined as an M. And then we have our diagnostic. Normally when you have things on the end of a language, like a type language, that's usually what gets returned. I'm not 100% sure, but we're going to write that in there anyway. Diagnostics, curlies, okay. And I'm just going to scroll the bottom, see if there's anything else that has to go there. Nope, but it does need to return the diags at the end. So I'm just going to go here and say var diags diagnostic. I think diags or diagnostic has something to do with error handling. Because I was doing error handling and then they're saying, oh, you got to use this diagnostic thing. I go, okay, sure. Whatever that means. So we want one for create, we want one for read, we want one from update, and then we want one for delete. Okay, so there are our four functions, and that looks fine to me. I'm not sure if it's going to complain if we don't have our schema, but we can attempt to build. The sooner we build, the sooner we get error reporting back here. Line 37, it has a problem. New literal, oh, sorry, 95, not 37. So we go to 95, and it wants that comma on the end, which is so uncomfortable for me to do. Then it has an issue on line 82. 82, why? Oh, line 100. I keep looking at the column. So this is the row. So you're going on row 100 here. And then it says 82, so 82 characters over. So somewhere over here, there's an issue. And I'm not 100% sure what it is. I'm just carefully looking at my other code here. Oh, the interface is supposed to be curlies, not parentheses. Because. Yeah, you know, like as you use a language, it's like, I know this is always supposed to be that, and then eventually I'll know Go. If I worked in Go in a week, I'd be like very fluent in it. Line 91 will go to line 91. Resource declared and not used. Oh, here, 91. Yeah, so we haven't done anything with it. So it's, and then line 98, it says missing return, which makes sense as well. Okay. So let's see what we need to do. We should probably return the resource. So we'll do that, return resource. And yeah, I don't think we have to do anything else with it. Resource declared and not used. Let me try this now. Okay, so just wanted that. So now it's building and we have these empty functions. Let's take a look and see what it would do at this stage. Terraform init, Terraform plan. And no changes, right? And that's totally fine because it's not going out and pulling any data, right? So unless it goes out and finds out some difference with information, it's not going to know what's going on here. But I think this is a good natural break for us to stop this video and start the next one, just because we have now set up the skeleton for the resources. And the next thing will be to fill in all these things in here. Okay, so I'm going to just stop here and we're going to commit our code. So we'll just add this here and say commit line 47. And did we pull after the last video? I really hope we did. If we don't know if we pulled or not and we don't want to pull, we can just do a git fetch and that will tell us if we haven't done anything there, and that's totally fine. So we're going to say set up skeleton for resource. Now, in a real project, you wouldn't be committing these partial, like committing and then pull requesting these. We would actually leave them in the feature branch and we wouldn't tag them and we would wait till we're done the whole job. But I'm not doing that just because I want you to tag just in case we want you to submit those tags and if we want to do manual grading or anything like that, okay? But anyway, so that was now submitted, and I want to go ahead and make a pull request, and we'll create a new pull request. I didn't want to compare it. Well, it's the right one, so that's totally fine, but we want the 47 Terraform providers to main. I'm going to create and make a pull request here. I'm going to go and squash and merge. I'm going to squash and merge. That is successful. I'm going to go git checkout main, and we will type in clear, and then we will go over here to our git graph. We'll make sure we are where we think we are. I mean, we're on main here, and that's ahead. So I'll do a git pull. That's why it looks confusing. And this, I think, should auto refresh. There we go. So now we are in the same place where we expected to be, 47 Terraform provider. And so what I want to do here now is tag it as 230 because the last one was 2.20. Git tag 230, git push tags. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop this workspace. And I'll see you in the next one where we'll actually start filling out the resource. This is where we're going to be making API calls to our mock API, okay? So I'll see you there soon. All right, ciao.